But then, guys, this is Nitin Kuhad. I am the instructor who will be taking care of the webinar and all the project management courses that we offer at InfosecTrain. So we're talking about mastering PMP again. What is new with PMBOK 7th edition? So for those individuals who want to understand what is PMBOK, and just in case, so PMBOK is basically the de facto standard, or you can call as the book offered by PMI. PMI is the US-based governing body, Project Management Institute, that offers the PMP certification. So PMBOK is Project Management Body of Knowledge, and the latest edition that we are currently using for delivering the course and for exam preparation is the 7th edition. So we'll be talking about what is new, because as and when we deliver our sessions on project management, there are still some individuals who have a confusion whether we should be focusing upon 6th edition or solely 7th edition is enough to go out and crack the examination. So we'll try and discuss all these thoughts at the end of the session. To start with, again, the brief introduction about InfosecTrain, an organization established in 2016. We're one of the finest security and technology training and consultancy company. We have grown a lot in the past years. Wide range of professional trainings, programs, certification, and consultancy service in IT and cybersecurity domain. That's the core area that we have always been into. But project management is something that we are entering in. High quality technical services, certifications, or customized training programs that have been curated with professionals of over 15 years of combined experience in the domain. In terms of real experience, and then providing consultancy, the same. This is a small list of the trusted clients throughout the globe to which we have been offering our trainings to. Just to understand again what is different with InfosecTrain. So we are not just talking about or boasting about that we have certified individuals. We have certified and experienced instructors, and anyone who wants to verify the credentials, we'll never shy away from sharing the certificates on the same. We are flexible in terms of giving you different modes of training. We definitely provide the access to recording sessions as and when the individuals really want to go back and understand the content. You can always do the same. We have a post-training completion certificate. We provide 24 hours support in terms of whenever you're attending a training, and 3 months complete support in terms of any help that you would require from the organization. We have customized our training, so just in case if it's not the entire course that you're looking out for, there are specific topics on which you really want to understand the areas, we can focus that too. Bringing on the list of partners, again, we have already added up these many global learning partners authorization with us. We're Microsoft partners, we are CompTIA's authorized partner, IAP, ISACA, PCBEC Council, and we are definitely looking out to bring more and more within the years to come up with InfosecTrain. This is just a brief introduction about InfoSec. Now let's just focus on to the topic that we are here for. And the topic is what is new with PMBOK 7th edition. Right, guys. So for those individuals, again, for whom project management is relatively a newer area, just to help you understand again, uh, currently into the market, there are other certifications also. So there are governing bodies like PMI is definitely one governing body. Then we have Excelos, and or you can basically say the rights have been taken care by people cert now. And then you also have CompTIA as an organization offering a Project Plus. Excelos or people cert in terms of project management, they offer training programs in terms of Prince 2 Foundation and Practitioner. PMI offers two level of certification. One is CAPM. CAPM is basically certified associate in project management. So basically it is for beginners. And then we definitely are talking about PMP. So PMP is project management professional. It is specifically for those individuals who have minimum of 5 to 6 years of project management experience. So ideally, there is a prerequisite to taking a PMP examination, which is an individual should have at least 36 months of project management experience. Along with that, 35 hours of training is mandatory. Training, or you call it as project management knowledge. So 35 hours of project management knowledge has to be there. This is when, if you have a 4 years degree attached to your name. If you do not have a degree attached to your name, if you have a diploma, in those cases, this 36 months changes to 60 months. And this remains the same. So this is when you do not have a 4 years degree. So that's basically the experience required for anyone who wants to take up PMP certification. Right. So just to brief you about what is the agenda for the webinar, we basically thought introduction of the PMP certifications and its significance in career, strategies for the PMP success, again, what all has to be kept into mind when you really want to take up PMP certification. What are the opportunities in PMP? Clarification of on the ECHO. ECHO stands for the exam content outline, which is basically published onto PMI website. So just in case if there is a clarification in the content outline needed. Then the most important aspect related to project management is we need a clarification on different development approaches. So we have predictive approach, we have adaptive approach, and then we have hybrid approach. So when do we use which approach? What is the difference between these approaches? What is the mindset that is needed in these approaches? That is something that we'll try and cover up. Then again, when to choose and how to choose a delivery. This is something that we'll talk about. And then ultimately, we'll be talking about the doubt clarification at the end of the session. Right. So just to begin with, again, guys, a simple understanding. It's not only in the area wherein we are sitting that project management has been talked about. No matter what economy are we talking about, project management is needed everywhere. The project economy backs the most important work all over the world. No matter where you are in the world, learning our core principles means you have guided lifetime practice in project management. And again, I'll be sharing certain numbers by which you'll try and understand what is the demand in project management. How should we actually go ahead and take this as a career, and not just as a career, again, a learning opportunity to basically be the best into the market. This is again just focusing upon the changes that have been brought into the examination. So just to introduce again, guys, this is called as PMI Talent Triangle. In the talent triangle, again, there are three perspectives that an individual has to be good at. Those three perspectives are an individual has to have a technical project management understanding. He has to be good with management skills, so he has to be good with managing people. And then ultimately, he has to have an understanding of the bigger business, strategic, and the business management. So, ideally, just to make it easy, again, what we are talking about is the PMI talent triangle is actually broken down into three domains, three performance domains, and these are those performance domains: people, process, and business environment. Now, we understand that as and when we are working on a project, we need human beings. So people, they need to be managed, they need to be motivated, conflict needs to be resolved. We need to have negotiation, we need to understand, have good interpersonal skills to communicate. We need to have better processes to have better results. And then the most important aspect, which may not be in our control, something that can surely influence how work happens within the projects. So we'll be understanding the business environment too. Now, if I talk about from specifically the examination perspective, the examination would have 180 multiple choice questions. So ideally, the exam would be broken down into three sections, section A, B, and C. Each section would have roughly around 60 questions. After you have completed one section, you have to submit those answers. And once you submit, you have an eligibility of taking up a break. A short 5 minutes break is something that you can take. Then start another section, submit those 60 questions, and then again a quick 5 minutes breather can be taken up. And then ultimately the last 60 question comes in. So in total, you have 230 minutes to take up these 180 questions. Once you submit a section, there's nothing called as going back. The questions are all multiple choice. Again, nowadays, multiple choice with fill in the blanks, multiple choice with match the columns, some pick up and choose, and mostly four choices is what we will have. There's nothing called as negative marking, and at the same time, there's nothing called as a passing score. So passing score basically depends upon the type of examination, the type of question paper that has been set across. All PMI wants is they'll tell you that out of people, we'll ask 42% of the questions. Process would take up 50% of the examination question, and the business environment would focus upon the remainder of 8%. Now, when you talk about the business environment, this is where we talk about factors that influence the way work is being done. Certain factors that are internal to the organization, there are certain factors that will be external to the organization. So we'll be understanding that within the business environment. And not only this, other factors again, what type of organization are you working with? If there's a PMO, what kind of a PMO structure do you work along with? What level of authority your project manager has? Are your resources shared? So we'll discuss all of that within the business environment. Then we talk about the people and process perspective, keeping in mind the three approaches: predictive, adaptive, and hybrid approaches. So, this is the most important concept that we have to understand. Now, the difference between the earlier exams and the exam that is happening now, this examination would have roughly around 40% of agile perspective covered into it. It will definitely have predictive to be focused upon, and then it will surely have hybrid approaches question also. Just to give you a basic understanding, when I talk about predictive means we are planning upfront just because the requirements have been stated clearly. So when you're working in an environment wherein the requirements have been clarified on the start, that is where we think of using a predictive approach. But then when we talk about agile, the word in itself says a flexible approach. Agility is flexibility, agility is speed, agility is being iterative, being incremental. So when we are focusing upon the word agile, that is where we are talking about adapting ourselves as per the requirements. So basically, if predictive is a plan driven approach, adaptive is a change driven approach. So we're likely to understand the requirements as and when they're changing, and we'll try and adapt ourselves to those changing requirements. Then ultimately, when we talk about a hybrid approach is an integration of both predictive as well as adaptive approach. So it's a custom based approach depending upon the environments. Certain areas are using predictive approach, and at the same time, certain areas we're using an adaptive approach. So it's a mixture of both these approaches. That is when we are talking about a hybrid approach. So ideally, it's just a spectrum wherein we are talking about Moving on from an environment wherein you know the clarity, requirements are clear, to requirements are not clear. So requirements are clear, we are okay understanding in terms of using a predictive approach. Requirements are not clear, that is where we are talking about using an adaptive approach. And then when we are talking about in middle, wherein we are confused whether we are clear or not clear, that is what we call as an adaptive, hybrid approach. Sorry. This is where we try and bring in the customized or customization from both these approaches. That's how the world really talks about. And then, as and when we get into the course, we definitely get into more details of the course. This is again what we are talking about in terms of talent triangle. So, with talent triangle, we're talking about three aspects: ways of working, which is where we are talking about process oriented approach; power skills in terms of your people handling skill; your business understanding is where you're talking about the business environment. So, PMI Talent Triangle reflects the skills needed by today's project professionals and change makers as they navigate the evolving world of project management. Now, just in case, again, when we are talking about delivering the examination, we will try and focus upon all these aspects. And from the examination perspective, I've already talked about which section talks about how much of the examination. When we talk about ways of working, this is about mastering the diverse and creative ways. So, from the development approaches of predictive, adaptive, and design thinking, we'll be talking about what kind of processes do we use in these environments to get the work done. Then, when you talk about power skill, this is about your people handling skills. The critical interpersonal skills required to apply influence, inspire change, and to build the relationships. Ultimately, when you're talking about your business acumen, this is how effective are you in terms of understanding the business. So, this is where effective decision making and understanding of how projects align with the big picture of broader organization strategy and the global trends will be focusing upon onto the same perspective. Now, just to quickly give you an overview in terms of the exam content outline. So, PMI says, as per the new content that has been published by PMI, we will have these five chapters to be taken care of, starting with understanding as to how do we create a high performing team. Then we'll talk about what happens when you're starting a project. Now, no matter what chapter are we talking about, during all of these chapters, we'll focus upon on all these approaches: predictive, adaptive, and hybrid. So it's not that first we'll cover predictive, then adaptive, and then hybrid. It's basically a common approach that we use when we are doing each chapter. We'll be focusing upon each of these aspects as to how do we really take that ahead. So at starting of project, what all is important depending upon the environment, depending upon the needs, we'll try and talk about whether which direction, which templates do we use. Then what happens when we start working, what happens when we're doing the work, how monitoring and controlling would happen, how management of team would happen. So we'll talk about both perspectives. Then how do we keep the team on track? So this is where motivation, negotiation, performance management, interpersonal skills, cultural abilities, we'll be talking about all of that. And to close up, we'll keep the business in mind. This is where ultimately it's about not not to do what I feel like. It's about ultimately what we go and give back to the organization. So ideally, it all starts from the vision statement. We break it down to mission statements. Then, based on these mission statement, we define goals and objectives. Those goals and objectives that we are defining has to be smart. And then to achieve these goals and objectives, we'll definitely talk about critical success factors, KPIs, and then just to bring in a new word, we're talking about OKRs also here. And then ultimately, while we start doing it, we would have matrices and measurements just to make sure that we are on track. So this is how, again, when we're working on to project, there are different documents like business case, project initiation document, project charter, project management plan. So we'll be talking about different documents that we prepare to basically be aligned with what we really have. We prepare a vision statement also as and when we start working, just to make sure that yes, everything is on track. Now, just to give you a basic understanding of what is the significance of PMP in our career. Now, ultimately, again, these are just some numbers that I'm sharing. It is on you as to how you really go ahead and take it up. No matter whether I talk about PMP, whether I talk about security, whether I talk about AI, BI, it's all on us as to in which direction do we really want to talk about. But specifically when it comes to PMP, these are the facts that have been taken directly by the PMI website. And PMI, as in when you're talking about PMI website also, PMI gives you reference of from where they are taking these numbers. So there are surveys that PMI does all over the year, and then these facts are back actually being accumulated. Currently, PMP is ranked as the top project management certification in North America by CIO Maxi because it demonstrates that you have a specific skill that employees are seeking, a dedication to excellence, and the capacity to perform at the very highest level. Just to talk about numbers, we're talking about 90 millions project management employees are currently in project based industries across the world. So that's the current strength of individuals. But at the same time, how much do we need more? 25 million new project management professionals are needed to meet the global talent demands by the end of 2030. So, again, if you talk about the number is huge. And then 12 million new employees are driven by expansion and a growth of 13 millions by retirement year on year. So it's on us as to how do we really take it up. These are numbers, but then as in when you have a designation, as in when you clear out a certification, it gives you a sense of accomplishment which you can basically showcase to the entire world. Currently, if you talk about different certification that I initially named, Prince 2, Project Plus, and others, PMP is called as the gold standard of project management across the globe. Then again, how do we really clear out the examination? Again, just on a lighter note, join your hands and let God take care of the examination is one simple aspect that 80% of people really go up with. But again, the purpose of attending a training is we don't really want to do that. We want to understand what do we focus upon and what are the current and the correct set of books or sample papers that we really have to focus upon. So again, I could really jot down some easy tips for us to understand as to how do we clear the exam in the very first attempt. First of all, it is very important that you know your content. So whether it is PMBOK 6, whether it is PMBOK 7, have we read it? Or it's just the presentation that I've seen and I'm perfectly okay and I'm say I am prepared to take the examination. So we will have to be sure in terms of yes, just to clear any doubts, PMBOK 6th and PMBOK 7th. If you read both, nothing like it. It's a very good approach, a decent approach. Just because sixth approach focus entirely upon process oriented and definitely it focuses on people aspect. When you talk about seventh edition, this is where agile and hybrid perspectives have been added up. Earlier, we used to only focus upon a waterfall approach, which is a predictive approach. But with the seventh edition, again, agile and hybrid perspective has been added up into the course content. So, which is how we really go ahead and take it up now. So, it's important that we know what is to be focused upon. And then, just to again mark it out, I mean, I don't get any money publishing the names, but then in the market, Rita Mulcahy has been a good book for exam preparation. So again, when you try and read, reading is perfectly good with these two books, but then only reading does not help you clear the examination. For question answers, we try and use these in our sessions to discuss how do you really go ahead and attempt this in different situations. So this is a go-to book for your question answers and your tips and tricks that you can surely learn for the examination. Use correct resources. So again, the normal aspect of every individual is go to Google and simply write out latest sample papers on PMP. Now, the only mistake that we do while we do this is we forget that on Google, anyone and everyone has the rights to upload questions and answers. Now, whether it is coming from an authentic source or not, that is hard to verify. And then, if you've already learned a wrong concept, understanding the correct one and then unlearning what you already know becomes a quite difficult challenge. So, I basically simply avoid using any Google sources until unless it has been verified. We do not share any course content with our participants to prepare for the same. Mind mapping again is one thing that has actually helped us understand the concepts, the techniques. So ideally, if you talk about the process oriented approach, PMI focuses upon 49 processes. Those are broken down into 10 knowledge areas and 5 process groups. Now, if you really have to understand that, the only thing that I basically help understand to my participants is there's nothing called as remembering the content. If you remember, trust me again, it's not possible for the examination to remember these aspects. Not happening. Understand things, try and look out for questions, things will become easier with the help of mind mapping. So we try and prepare certain templates or drawings or matrices so that it becomes easier for us to understand. All right, if a particular question comes, which area, which technique, which perspective are we focusing upon? Then the most important aspect definitely is how we use the time. So I told you 230 minutes, 180 questions. Now, there are questions that would be four liners, there are questions that would be eight liners, kind of a case study thing. On which do I spend how much time? First, you have to understand that every question has an equal mark. So, whether you do it, whether you spend 5 minutes on doing it, whether you spend 1 minute, it's only giving you the same mark. So, don't really be an individual. No, I will have to score everything on the first go itself. Please do not. Any question that you think you need to think in, you need to really need time for that, please mark and move on to the next question. We'll be focusing upon different approaches during the examination as to which questions to be attempted first and which we can really leave for the remainder of the session. A bit more focus definitely on agile and hybrid approaches. So from the examination, again, the examination changed in January 19. Ideally, the major change happened here. Since then, we have been focusing upon different aspects, but then from the exam content, nothing major has changed. It's just the courseware that has more focused on agile and hybrid approach. Before this, it was all waterfall. Just because PMI already has a certification called as PMI ACP, Agile Certified Practitioner. So initially they wanted to focus upon PMP, you focus on waterfall, and ACP will focus upon Agile. But with the addition of PMBOK 7th, we are basically just letting up understand that everything has to be understood if you want to clear PMP on the one go. So we have to understand all these approaches. This is just a small description about what is a predictive approach, what is an adaptive approach, and what is an integration of both, which is what is a hybrid approach. So when you talk about a predictive approach, what we're talking about is predictive is always plan based. Why? Just because requirements are clear. So if you know what your customers want, all right, we can plan for it. But if we do not know what they want, you can't plan for it. So predictive is a plan based approach. Activities are completed in a distant or a linear fashion, one after the other. New phase begins only once the previous is completed. That means we break down the project into phases and we focus on phase by phase. Once a phase is complete, we do a review that should we move on to the next phase or not. If the review is clear, we move on to the next phase and then we go ahead and understand as to how we plan the next phase. The key roles that we are talking about within predictive approach are of a sponsor, who is basically an individual who authorizes the project. He's ideally called as the money guy, an individual who's putting his interest, money into the work. Then we have a project manager. Basically, he's the one who manages the project on behalf of the sponsor. Day-to-day management is always done by him, but the overall perspective of accountability in terms of success or failure, that's been taken care by the sponsor. In terms of if we focus upon value delivery proposition, so in a predictive environment, value is delivered only at the end of the project. Once everything is done, only then the handover happens. Deliverables are transitioned to the customer only at completion. Value can be realized in both short as well as in long term. So it depends upon how long or how short your project is. The value realization actually varies in terms of the timelines that you have defined for the project. Then when we focus upon an adaptive approach, adaptive is not a plan driven approach, it's a change driven approach. It is agile, it is incremental and iterative. So when you focus upon an iterative approach, iterative is something that you repeat into loops. You're working in loops. One loop after the other, you're repeating the work. But the best part with iterative approach is you do not have to plan for long. The iterations are small in cycle. It is time boxed. So the maximum time duration of an iteration that we talk about is anything between 1 to 4 weeks. There are different organizations that say 1 to 3 weeks, but then it's on us. We understand smaller the better. Ideal size that we take up of an iteration is ideally 2 weeks. Incremental is the value keeps on adding iteration by iteration. It's a time box cadence. Cadence stands for the flow. That means the flow is always time bound, or it can be a continuous flow. Ideally, what happens is, again, I'm not getting into details. Agile is not a approach. Agile is just set of values. But if an organization wants to be an agile, they would have to use some framework. Frameworks like Scrum, frameworks like Kanban, extreme programming, DSDM, TDD, feature driven development, FDD, lean. These are different approaches. So again, for a layman, if I have to clarify what is this, Everyone knows what's an ice cream. So treat Agile an ice cream. If you want to taste it, it is offered in flavors: vanilla, strawberry, butterscotch, and all these are flavors. So if you want to taste an ice cream, you have to use one of these flavors. That is ideally what Agile is. If we talk about the key roles that are there in Agile framework or Agile set of values, we focus upon three major roles. One is of a product owner. He is also called as the VOC. VOC is called as voice of the customer, an individual who is responsible for understanding the requirements from customers. Ideally, this role is also taken up by someone called as a business analyst within the organizations. So product owner controls the value proposition. Why? Just because he or she is an individual who understands the requirements from the customers. So if they are the one who is understanding the requirements from customers, they definitely are the best persons to talk about what adds value to the customers and what does not. So he's the one again responsible for prioritization. Just because we are breaking down the work in iteration, everything cannot be done in one go. So we need to do prioritization about what is the most important thing that we hand over first. We have a project team. A team is always something called as a self-organized unit. What is the meaning of self-organized? Self-organized means we decide for ourselves. We decide the role and responsibility that we need. No one else takes our decision. So how the work is to happen is the team's perspective, no one else. What is to be done? It is basically the product owner's responsibility. But how? It is always the team's responsibility. Then the third role that we talk about is of a facilitator. Now we can call it as a facilitator, you can call him as a team lead, a scrum master, agile coach. Ideally, what he's doing is giving the team the environment that they need so that they can focus on doing things. If they have any challenges, any issue, it's me as a facilitator who would try and help you come up with those answers or give you the environment that you need to get your work done. That's what we're talking about when we talk about adaptive environments. Value delivery, it is iterative or incremental delivery to customer during the life cycle. So everything is not only handed over at the end of the work, but with every iteration, there is a value addition that we do. Regular customer feedback cycle enables continuous development of value towards a final product. And then when you talk about a combination hybrid approach, it is basically a tailored approach, a customized based approach. So it's basically the combination of predictive and adaptive, which is what is called as a hybrid approach. So as in when we go through the course, we'll get into the details of all the three approaches with a long process, domains, all the three domains: people, process, and the business environment. Just to give you a brief introduction about the word called as agile, I told you again, the word agile means being flexible, speed, iterative, incremental. This is all the word agile. Now, agile, this is something that I told you. Agile is not a framework, agile is set of values. So we have something called as Agile Manifesto, and that's the Agile Manifesto. Four set of values that we focus upon within Agile framework. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. So ideally, again, if you really have to talk about the challenges that we have when we work into agile environments is the most important is culture within an organization. We have been bound to work in certain environments that we are always happy, else commanding for us, and we just doing the work on terms of what he says. If you are bound in those environments, forget about the word agile. If you're working in an environment wherein you are saying that, all right, I am not really okay working with others, I prefer doing the work alone. So when there are siloed culture, something again very challenging for the organizations. Because the most important thing Agile needs is a self organized team. And for being self organized, the basic traits are you have to be self motivated. You need to go far away from the bureaucracy of saying sir and boss. Again, we do not have that culture when we're working in agile environments. Everyone is same. If this is happening, only then collaboration is possible. And if collaboration is possible, only then being self organized is something that you can dream of, or else forget about it. Focusing upon the four values, Agile focuses on things on the left a bit more as compared to the right aspects on right. I am not saying that we do not have things on the right and we only have this. Absolutely not something. This is not what I am telling you. What I'm telling you is we give more importance to items on the left as compared to items on right. What does that mean? That means individuals and interactions are given more focus as compared to processes and tools. So for us, what process and tools does the organization gives me is not important as compared to how we work together as a team. So our interaction should happen between the individuals. That's more important rather than me focusing upon the tools that the organization has defined. Working software over comprehensive document. I am not saying documentation is not important, but then ultimately it's about the deliverable. So when I talk about working software, it's about the deliverable. The deliverable has to be focused more as compared to just focusing upon documenting things. Ultimately, the customer does not needs your documentation, he needs the end deliverable. So we focus on more on terms of the deliverable rather than documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So for us, what does your SLA, what does your contract say? We'll only stick to them is not that important as compared to interacting with customers on a regular basis. So we work in iterations. With every iteration, there is something called as a handover and there's something called as a feedback. So with every iteration, I told you what is the time frame of an iteration. The time frame is anything between 1 to 4 weeks. So with that iteration, there has to be a meeting with the customers. So we focus more on customer collaboration as compared to contract negotiation. And ultimately, yes, it is not about focusing upon a plan that has been prepared, but it is about how we respond to changes. That is ideally what is the name agile, adaptive. So we focus on responding to change over following a standard plan. So that's what the four core agile manifesto is. Now, whether you talk about Scrum Masters, product owner, whatever certification related to agile, the four values remain absolutely the same. So we focus on to this when we focus on to the agile environment. And then lastly, again, if you really want to ask me, what does PMP validates? Again, if I become a PMP certified, what would individuals understand? Who am I? So again, nothing as such major, but then as an individual, if you really know the concept, PMP validates that you are highly skilled in the three perspectives that we're talking about. Motivating people and teams through all phases of a successful project, using predictive, agile, and hybrid approaches to determine which way of working is the best for each project. So it's not just the understanding of these three perspectives, it is about understanding when to apply which approach. And then you are good in highlighting the success of a project and its impact on the overall strategic organizational goals. That means you are okay to help everyone stand out and help the organization understand we have achieved something bigger, which is ideally what was the purpose of our project. What is the purpose of every project that you work upon? The purpose of a project is to bring a change. So with this project management professional certification, we'll try and understand how do we make these changes successful, which is the most important perspective of understanding a course. Right, guys. So I hope I've not taken much of your time. Ideally, this is something that we are talking about. Just to keep you posted, again, we are starting out a new session for PMP, which is starting from 27th of April. Again, these are just weekend classes, 4 hours each. These are the timings, and that's the costing from wherever you are. Again, these are the prices that we're talking about, and I'll be the facilitator taking care of the training.